Hi friends, Mindy here. Today I am working on day 3 of Delivered to the Saints from Bythewell4god. I have already pulled out my journal that I'm working on. I have my notes already written out, and I have this journaling card from the kit that I really am very inspired by. I love the mixed media aspect of some of these cards, which should be no surprise. And so I'm going to try to recreate some of that background here on this page. I feel like I'm going to need 3 pages, so I'm just going to plan for that for all of the notes that I did take. So I'm starting off here with just some matte medium and this is actually some dress pattern that I have torn up. I wanted to keep sort of those bold black lines on there just to give some background interest. And I'm just adding this to my page. And I'm actually going to be adding this to both sides. The page on the left is some Bristol paper, and obviously the paper on the right is the craft cardstock that came with this journal kit. And so I want to just kind of make these two seem a little bit more cohesive together. And so this is a good way to do that. I'm just going to use that tissue on the right side more for texture than for anything. And then like I said, I think I'm going to use this third page as well. So I'm going to go ahead and you'll see me throughout the video kind of flipping back and forth to this third page. I did have quite a lot of notes that I had taken when I was doing my study, that sort of, I was doing my own study basically from day 3. And I would encourage you, especially with this devotional, to do that. It's really important to understand, as we're looking at the tenets of our faith, to understand why you believe what you believe. And so as I was going through some of these scriptures, some other scriptures were coming to mind. And so I just took the time to go ahead and include some of those that I felt like were important to the point that I was trying to make. So I ended up with a lot more notes than were actually listed in the devotional, and that's totally fine. So I just needed to make room for them. So what you see me doing off to the side here is I have some white gesso. I am working on a paint palette here, and I am kind of off to the side of the camera, so I'm sorry about that. You're not going to be able to actually see any of that paint that I have over there, but it's just plain old white gesso, and I'm just taking that with a paintbrush and going all over this. I'm trying to leave some of the brown from the tissue and from the craft paper kind of peeking through, and then I'm coming in with Gathered Twigs Distress Paint as well. And this is wet. The white paint, the gesso is still wet, so I'm getting different values for that color, which is exactly what I wanted. It just helps add to some of the dimension of the page. So I'm not taking care to mix it in completely. There should be some white. You can see I was holding up that journaling card so you can kind of see. And then I want some areas darker. I want so I'm going back straight with the gathered twigs. And so as this is drying, you just kind of get different layers, and I'm keeping the brush strokes in there. I'm just leaving it. I'm letting the wrinkles from the tissue paper kind of, come to the foreground, just so all of this is just visual texture and actual texture. And then just to add some more contrast, I came in with Scorched Timber, really, really dark brown. So I'm just adding this very lightly, really with like the corner of my paintbrush. And then while all that paint is still sort of wet, it will sort of soften and blend into the background, but it's also giving me those really nice lines of texture that are sort of existing in that mixed media background that I'm sort of inspired by. So if you've seen my channel before, I love mixed media, and so I really love the look of this. So anytime I have a chance to kind of play with that, I'm going to do that. And then again, here's that third page, just doing all those same things on the back side with the gesso and the gathered twigs, and then I'll come in with some Scorched Timber. The most difficult part about this was really trying to make sure that all 3 of these pages seemed pretty cohesive, because it's impossible to, mimic from one page to the next exactly what you're doing, but really just kind of making sure that they're as similar as I could get them, if that makes sense. So I ended up kind of fiddling with this back page a little bit too long probably, and then it's just a messy process, but it's just something that I really love. So you can see I'm flipping back, adding a little bit more, kind of blending it out, just going back and forth really to get all the color down that I want. Again, back to that third page, and then back again to the other 2. And then I'm going to dry all of that really, really well, because I'm going to come in with this dictionary page stamp. Now I am stamping with archival ink because I am stamping over distress paint, over acrylic paint. So you don't want to use something like oxide. It just won't dry on there. So you want something that's going to dry. I'm not doing a solid stamping of this. I'm really just trying to get a little bit of visual texture in the back. One of the journaling cards has, like, you can kind of see very, very faint text in it. And so it's just a good way to add a little bit of visual texture. So you can see I don't even have this stamp on a stamp block. I'm just inking it up and just kind of pushing on different parts of it with my finger. And it's very difficult to see on camera. I don't know if I mentioned this. I'm using ground espresso archival instead of black. I really wanted to just kind of keep that blended in. And so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm coming in with some distress crayon. This is Uncharted Mariner and Stormy Sky, and I'm just kind of scribbling just a little bit here and there. I want to bring in some of this blue, but I want this to blend into the background the way that it is kind of in the journaling card. And so what I'm using to do that is some gesso that is mixed with water. I just have a little bit of a wash that I keep in a bottle. And then I have that off to the side, and I'm sorry you can't see that. I'm just picking that up with my paintbrush. I'm going to be using my fingers because I really feel like that helps it blend better. But distress crayons are reactive, and so you can react them with water, or you can use gesso. And so doing this just kind of helps soften the color. It also lightens the color just a little bit, and it helps to kind of blend it into that sort of misty kind of look in the background. I do fiddle around with this, admittedly, for quite some time, so I'm not going to make you watch me do that entire process. But this is kind of that stage of mixed media, at least that I go through, that you just kind of get to this middle part that you're like, I'm not really sure what I just did to this page. It's just kind of like a messy middle phase, and that can get really scary. But if you kind of just push through and just keep working, if you don't like it, it's usually because you just aren't finished with it. So there's another layer or another something that you can do. So here it just looks like really patchy blocks of color. You can see now I'm going to move to this third page and do all that same thing. And so I'm just going to mess with this. So I was trying to use my paintbrush for this whole process to not get it so much on my fingers, but that's just not me, especially when I'm doing mixed media. I'm like all hands in all the things. So I just feel like it blends better. So I'm going back in now with some of that gathered twigs, really to just kind of help blur that line between that blue color and the background, and it's just going to try to pull everything back into one cohesive thing instead of looking like just a layer of blue splotches on top of the brown background that I have there already. And then I'll go back through on this page, and I'm coming back in with some more of that gesso wash and some more of the gathered twigs, and just working this in here again, just using my fingers. Not going to make you watch the whole thing, but this is how it ends up. So I pulled out an older stamp set from Bythewell4god called Multimedia Marks, which is one of my favorite stamp sets of all time. And I pulled this one little stamp. I'm actually stamping this one with black VersaFine ink because I really wanted that nice bold black color, and or at least I thought I did. And I was like, that is really, really bold. And so I'm going back in after I made sure that that was nice and dry. I'm just going back in with my brush and a little bit of that gesso wash just to knock it back just ever so slightly into the background. It's still nice and bold, but it's not like super in your face. And then again, doing this to the third page as well. Again, just going really gently over it with some of that gesso wash just to take a little bit of the edge off. And I did want to leave some places that were, white, because that is how that mixed media look of the card. So now I'm pretty much finished with my background. So I'm just going to add all my finishing touches. So I'm adding the sticker that says day 3. I have my label and the title starter for this day, which is the Deity of Christ. And I did hit that a little bit with my blender brush that had just a little bit of, ink on it, just to knock back a little bit of the white. And then I distressed the edge of this file folder that I'm going to wrap around this page on the right, and it's going to basically function as a double pocket for me this way. And then you can kind of see the inspiration again with that mixed media look. And so I'm taking just whatever ink was left over on my little blender there from the ground espresso, just to knock back the white just a little bit. I'm not interested in making it so distressed, but I did want to have some of that white. It just helps break up all of the, intense colors that are on here. So I'm gluing down these ephemera pieces, kind of hanging off the edges of that file folder that's going to function as that little wrap pocket. And then this one that's going to be over here on the left side, this ephemera piece I just glued down on two sides of the typewriter. That way I can tuck some things in there as well. Like I said, I had a lot of notes from this day, so I wanted to make sure I had a good place to put all of them. So I'm just kind of deciding now how I want to put these. I didn't really want to cover up the title, so I'm going to put those journaling cards in the file folder pocket there, just deciding which way it goes best. And then I'm going to play around with the placement. I feel like this one is actually going to look better on the right side. And then I'm going to tuck the flashcards in here, and that just brings all of the colors all the way through all of the pages, if that makes sense. So tuck this last note here in the back, and that's everything for me. So if you liked this video, I would really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and until next time, bye.